The wind pushed through the broken bus shelter long before sunrise. Sarah Blake pulled her coat tighter and tried to sleep anyway. The cold concrete beneath her felt harder than usual. A truck rolled past on Western Avenue and rattled the glass behind her. She opened her eyes and stared into the dark. The smell of old rain and car exhaust hung in the air. She was 38 years old. 3 years earlier, she had owned a small house on the south side of Chicago. Not a fancy house, not a big one. Just a place with a tiny front yard and a mailbox that leaned a little to the left. She used to complain about that mailbox. Now she would have given anything to see it again. A police car drove by slowly. Sarah sat up before the officer could tell her to move. That had become a habit. She folded her blanket carefully. She always folded it carefully, even when nobody was looking, even when it made no difference. Some things mattered because they reminded her who she was. The blanket went into her backpack. The backpack held almost everything she owned. A few shirts, a notebook, a family photo, a cracked phone, a library card. That was about it. She rubbed her hands together and started walking. The sky was still dark. Her stomach hurt. It hurt every morning. Some mornings she got breakfast at a church nearby. Some mornings she didn't. That morning she wasn't sure. She crossed the street and passed a bakery. The smell almost stopped her. Fresh bread, warm butter, coffee. The kind of smells that made memories show up without warning. She remembered Sunday mornings with her daughter. Pancakes, cartoons, laughter. That memory hit hard. She kept walking. Sarah had a daughter named Emma. Emma was 14 now. She lived with Sarah's sister in Joliet. Sarah called every Thursday. Every single Thursday, no matter what. Sometimes she talked for 20 minutes, sometimes for 2, but she always called. It was Thursday. That mattered. She checked her phone battery, 11%. Enough if she was careful. The church opened at 6. She reached it 10 minutes early. A few people already waited outside. Some she knew, most she didn't. Homeless life taught strange lessons. You could sleep beside someone for months. You could share food. You could help each other survive. And still never learn their last name. A volunteer unlocked the door. "Morning, Sarah." She smiled. "Morning, Miss Linda." Miss Linda handed her a cup of coffee. Hot, strong, perfect. Sarah wrapped both hands around it. The warmth felt like medicine. "How you doing?" Miss Linda asked. Sarah shrugged. "Still standing?" Miss Linda nodded. "Sometimes that's enough." Sarah wished she believed that. Inside, people lined up quietly. Eggs, toast, coffee. No one talked much. Hunger usually won the conversation. Sarah ate slowly. She always ate slowly. When food wasn't guaranteed, every bite felt important. Across the room sat an older man named Walter. He raised a hand. She waved back. Walter had been homeless longer than she had. He knew every shelter, every soup kitchen, every safe place to sit during winter. He also knew how hope disappeared. Sarah saw it in his eyes. That scared her, because she sometimes saw it in her own. After breakfast, she headed toward the library. The library opened at 9. She arrived at 8. She wasn't the first person waiting, not even close. Libraries saved people more often than anyone realized. Heat in winter, air conditioning in summer, internet, bathrooms, electric outlets, books. For some people, it was just a building. For Sarah, it was survival. She sat on a bench and opened her notebook. Every morning she wrote 3 things. Not because some book told her to, not because a therapist suggested it, because she was afraid. Afraid of becoming bitter, afraid of forgetting herself. So she wrote 3 good things, every day, even on the worst days. That morning she wrote, "Coffee was hot. I still have Emma's photo. The sun came up." Simple things, tiny things, but they counted. A man sat beside her, young, maybe 22. His clothes were dirty. His face looked exhausted. "Mind if I said?" "No." He nodded. For a while, neither spoke. Then he said something unexpected. "I think I'm becoming invisible." Sarah looked at him. What do you mean? People don't see me anymore. She understood immediately. Everyone homeless understood. People looked through you, past you, around you, anywhere except at you.
Like eye contact might be contagious. Sarah stared at the street. I know. The young man laughed sadly. That's messed up. Yeah. A long silence followed. Then the library opened. The day moved forward, like it always did, like it didn't care. 3 years earlier, everything had been different. The last normal day happened on a Tuesday. Sarah remembered every detail. She remembered the smell of laundry soap, the sound of Emma getting ready for school, the sunlight through the kitchen window. She remembered because it was the last morning before everything broke. Sarah worked as a medical billing specialist. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. Barely. She was divorced already. Emma split time between homes. Money was tight. Still, they managed. Then Sarah got sick. Not terribly sick, at first. Just tired. Then weaker. Then worse. Doctor visits turned into tests. Tests turned into hospital stays. Hospital stays turned into bills. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. Insurance covered some. Not enough. Never enough. The numbers kept growing. Her savings disappeared. Then her credit cards. Then loans. Then panic. One afternoon, she sat in a hospital room staring at a bill. The amount looked fake, like someone accidentally added extra zeros. A nurse walked in. Sarah laughed, not because it was funny, because she didn't know what else to do. Things got worse. She missed work, then more work, then even more. Her boss tried helping, for a while. Eventually, the company replaced her. Business was business. She understood that. It still hurt. Without income, everything started collapsing. Slowly at first, then all at once. The mortgage fell behind. Collection calls started. Letters arrived every day. Final notice, past due, immediate action required. Each envelope felt heavier than the last. One evening, she sat at her kitchen table. Emma was at her father's house. The house was silent. Sarah opened another letter, then another, then another. By midnight, she knew. She wasn't keeping the house. The realization sat quietly beside her, like an unwelcome guest. She cried until sunrise. Months later, she watched strangers carry furniture away. Everything she had worked for, everything, gone. She rented a small apartment afterward, then couldn't afford that either. Friends helped for a while. Couches, spare rooms, promises. But help has limits. People have their own lives, their own bills, their own problems. One by one, the offers disappeared. Eventually, there was nowhere left. The first night homeless happened during January, Chicago winter, the kind of cold that feels personal. Sarah sat inside a train station trying not to panic. She still remembered the sound of the announcement overhead, still remembered staring at families going home, still remembered pretending she wasn't terrified. That night changed her, not all at once, slowly, like water wearing down stone. Back in the library, she updated her resume. Again. She had done it hundreds of times, maybe thousands. The gaps scared employers. The homelessness scared them too. Even when she didn't mention it, people could sense struggle. Sometimes they treated it like a disease. A librarian named Mr. Hayes walked by. "Morning, Sarah." "Morning. You hear about the warehouse hiring?" She looked up. "No." He handed her a printed page. "Applications open today." Her heart jumped, then settled. She had learned caution. Hope could be dangerous. Still, she took the paper. "Thanks. Don't mention it." She stared at the page for a long time. What happened next would stay with her. Not because it changed everything, because it almost did. The warehouse interview came 3 days later. Sarah borrowed cleaner clothes, washed up in a shelter bathroom, practiced answers all night. She arrived early. The manager seemed friendly. The conversation went well, really well. For the first time in months, she felt something rare, possibility. The manager smiled. "We'll call you." Sarah left smiling too. She allowed herself a tiny dream. A paycheck, a room, maybe a small apartment someday. Maybe. The call never came. She waited a week, then 2, then 3. Nothing. She finally called them. The position was filled. That was it.
No explanation, no apology. Just over. She sat outside afterwards staring at traffic. A little boy walked past holding his mother's hand. He dropped $1 accidentally. Sarah picked it up. "Hey, buddy." The mother turned. Sarah handed it back. The woman looked surprised, then embarrassed, then grateful. "Thank you." "Of course." The boy smiled, a huge smile, like she had saved treasure. For a second, Sarah smiled too. The boy waved, then disappeared into the crowd. That $1 would have bought food. She never considered keeping it, not for 1 second. That was the strange thing about Sarah. Life had taken almost everything. Not kindness, never kindness. She protected it fiercely, like hidden currency, like something more valuable than money. Weeks passed. Winter softened into spring. Rain replaced snow. The city smelled different. Wet pavement, fresh grass, exhaust. Life moving again. Sarah spent afternoons applying for jobs, evenings finding safe places, nights fighting loneliness. The loneliness surprised her most. Not hunger, not cold, not fear. Loneliness. The feeling of disappearing. One Thursday she called Emma. Her battery sat at 4%. Emma answered immediately. "Mom? Hey, kiddo." Her voice brightened. It always did. They talked about school, a science project, a basketball game, a teacher Emma liked. Normal things. Beautiful things. Then Emma got quiet. "Mom? Yeah? When are things gonna get better?" The question landed hard. Sarah looked at the sidewalk. People walked past, cars passed, life passed. She swallowed. "Soon." She hated lying. Emma was quiet. Then she said something Sarah never forgot. "I still believe in you." The call ended minutes later. The battery died, but those words stayed alive. "I still believe in you." Sarah repeated them for days, sometimes for weeks. On nights when hope felt impossible, those words returned. Summer arrived. The city grew louder. People stayed outside later. Street festivals filled neighborhoods. Music drifted through the air. Life looked easy from a distance. Sarah knew better. One afternoon, she sat outside the library, reading a discarded book. A woman approached. Mid-50s, professional clothes, kind eyes. "You dropped this." Sarah looked confused. The woman handed her a folded paper. It wasn't hers. "I think you have the wrong person." The woman smiled. "No, I don't." Sarah opened it. Inside was a $20 bill. She immediately looked up. The woman started walking away. "Wait." The woman turned. Sarah hurried over. "You don't have to do this." "I know." Sarah stared at the money, then at the woman. "Why?" The woman smiled softly. "Because somebody once helped me." Then she left. Just like that. Sarah watched until she disappeared. That $20 bought food, charged her phone, gave her breathing room. But the money wasn't what stayed with her. The reason stayed. Somebody once helped me. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Not because of the noise, not because of the cold, because something felt different. Tiny, barely noticeable, but different. Like a lock somewhere inside her had shifted. She didn't know it yet, but another person was about to enter her life. Someone who would remember her name. Someone who would notice something nobody else had seen. And it would begin with the simplest conversation imaginable. A conversation that almost never happened. Sarah almost missed the conversation. That was the truth. If she had left the library 5 minutes earlier, it never would have happened. If she had chosen a different table, it never would have happened. If she had given in to one more bad day, it never would have happened. But life sometimes turns on tiny things. That afternoon, she sat near a window, updating her resume again. The same resume, the same work history, the same gaps, the same silent fear. A man walked into the library carrying a cardboard box. He looked around 45. Work boots, faded jeans, gray shirt with a company logo. Nothing special, at least not at first. He approached the help desk and spoke with Mr. Hayes. Then he pinned a flyer onto a bulletin board. Sarah didn't think much about it. People pin things there every day. Lost dogs, apartment listings, church events, community classes. The man turned and nearly bumped into her chair. "Sorry about that." "No problem." His eyes dropped to her screen. "Job hunting?" Sarah laughed softly. "When ain't I?" He nodded. "Fair enough." Most people would have kept walking. He didn't. "What kind of work?" "Medical billing." His eyebrows rose. "Really? Used to be? My sister does that." Sarah smiled politely. The conversation should have ended there. Instead, he pointed at the bulletin board. "My company's hiring." Sarah glanced at the flyer. Maintenance assistant. Nothing close to medical billing. Not even remotely. "I appreciate it." The man shrugged. "Work's work." He wasn't wrong. Sarah looked again. Benefits. Full-time. Decent pay. Nothing amazing, but steady. Steady sounded beautiful. The man held out his hand. "I'm Mike." "Sarah. Nice meeting you." Then he left. Simple. Ordinary. Forgettable. Except it wasn't. Because Mike noticed something. While walking away, he looked back. Sarah was still staring at the flyer. Not with excitement, with hesitation. The kind that comes from being disappointed too many times. He knew that look. His father wore it after losing work years ago. Mike never forgot it. The next morning, Sarah called the number. The interview came 4 days later. She almost didn't go. 3 interviews had failed recently. Hope was expensive. Failure cost less when expectations stayed low. Still, she went. The company sat inside an old industrial building near Bridgeport. The office smelled like coffee and machine oil. Mike sat behind a desk. That surprised her. "So you're the boss?" Mike laughed. "One of them." Sarah felt embarrassed. The interview started simply. Work history, skills, availability. Then came the gaps. Always the gaps. Mike looked at the resume, then at her. Sarah braced herself. Instead, he asked something different. "Tell me about the hardest thing you've handled." She blinked. Not what she expected. She thought carefully. Staying kind. Mike looked confused. "Really?" Sarah nodded. "When everything goes wrong." She looked at her hands. "When you're angry. When you're scared. When people stop seeing you." She swallowed. "That's hard." The room became quiet. Mike didn't speak immediately. Neither did she. Finally, he nodded. "I think you're right." The interview ended. Sarah walked outside. She felt nothing. Not hope, not despair. Just tired. The phone rang 2 days later. She almost ignored it. Unknown number. Most unknown numbers meant debt collectors. Something told her to answer. "Hello? Sarah?" "Yes. It's Mike." Her heart jumped. She stood up immediately. "We'd like to offer you the position." The world seemed to pause. Traffic noise faded. People disappeared. Everything narrowed into those words. "We'd like to offer you the position." Sarah sat down hard on a bench. For a second, she couldn't speak. "Sarah? I'm here. You okay?" She laughed, then cried. At the same time. "Yeah." A long pause followed. Then she whispered 4 words. "Thank you for believing." Mike answered softly. "You earned it." After the call ended, she sat there crying. Not dramatic crying. Not movie crying. Quiet crying. The kind that comes from carrying too much weight. The kind that comes when your knees finally stop shaking. A woman walking by asked if she was okay. Sarah smiled. For the first time in a while. The job started Monday. Reality arrived quickly. The work wasn't easy. The hours were long. Her feet hurt constantly. She hadn't worked full-time in years. The first week nearly broke her. By Friday, her legs felt like concrete. Her back screamed. Her hands ached. But she loved every second. Because she was moving forward for the first time. Forward. The shelter worker noticed immediately. Ms. Linda smiled when Sarah arrived after work. "You look different." "I feel different." "What changed?" Sarah grinned. "I got tired for the right reason." Ms. Linda laughed. That became Sarah's favorite feeling, being tired for the right reason, not from surviving, from building. The first paycheck arrived 2 weeks later. She stared at it for nearly 10 minutes, not because it was huge, because it existed, because someone had paid her for work again, because it meant she still belonged somewhere. She cashed it immediately, then watched half disappear. Food, transportation, old debts, phone bill, life. The money vanished fast, but not all of it. She opened a savings account. The balance started with $25. Most people would have laughed. Sarah didn't. $25 was proof that things could grow. That night she wrote in her notebook, not 3 good things, 5. The next months moved slowly, painfully slowly. Progress always looks faster from far away. Up close it crawls. Sarah worked, saved. Worked more, saved more. She still stayed in shelters. Still counted every dollar. Still worried constantly. One emergency could destroy everything. And emergencies always seemed close. Then came the first setback. A big one. Her phone rang during work. Emma's school. Her stomach dropped immediately. Bad news often arrived through school calls. She answered. The vice principal explained. Emma had been in a fight. Not serious, but serious enough. Sarah drove to Joliet after work. The trip felt endless. Emma sat silently in the office, eyes red, arms folded, angry. Sarah thanked the staff and took her outside. The parking lot was quiet. "Want to tell me what happened?" Emma kicked at the pavement. "No." Sarah waited. Finally, Emma spoke. "They said stuff." "What stuff?" Emma's voice cracked. "They said my mom's homeless." The words hit hard, harder than Sarah expected. Emma looked away. They laughed. Sarah felt shame, rage, sadness, all at once, but mostly heartbreak, not for herself, for Emma, a 14-year-old girl carrying adult pain. Sarah sat beside her. Neither spoke for a while. Cars passed. Wind moved through nearby trees. Then Sarah put an arm around her daughter. "You listen to me." Emma stared ahead. "This isn't your shame." Tears rolled down Emma's face. Sarah continued. "None of it." Emma finally looked at her. "What if it never gets better?" The question sounded familiar. Sarah remembered hearing it before. This time her answer felt different. "Then we'll keep going anyway." Emma stared at her, then nodded slowly. They sat together until sunset. That drive back to Chicago hurt, but it also strengthened something. Sarah wasn't fighting only for herself anymore. She never had been. The next morning she woke up even more determined. Winter returned. Chicago covered itself in gray skies, cold winds, early darkness. Sarah kept working, kept saving, kept climbing. Then another opportunity appeared. Mike called her into his office. She worried immediately. People who lived through instability often expected bad news first. Mike smiled. "Relax." She laughed nervously. "I'm trying." He handed her paperwork. "Open it." She did. Her eyes widened. Training program. Administrative coordinator. Higher pay. Office position. Real advancement. Sarah looked up. "You serious?" Mike nodded. "You've earned it." For a second, she couldn't speak. Again. That seemed to happen around good news. Words disappeared. Eventually, she managed one. "Why me?" Mike leaned back. "Because you show up." Sarah frowned. "That's it. That's bigger than you think." He wasn't wrong. Showing up mattered, especially when life gave you reasons not to. The training lasted 4 months. Sarah studied every night. Videos, manuals, notes, library computers, coffee, determination. She treated it like college, like survival, like a second chance, because that's exactly what it was. The promotion came in early spring. More money, regular hours, benefits, a future. The future still felt fragile, like thin ice. But it existed. That alone felt incredible. Then came a day Sarah never expected. Apartment hunting. She almost cried during the first viewing, not because the place was beautiful. It wasn't. Small kitchen, older carpet, tiny bedroom, nothing fancy. But it had a key, a door, privacy, safety, home. The landlord approved her application. Sarah sat in her car afterward shaking. 3 years. 3 years without a place to call her own. 3 years carrying everything she owned. 3 years wondering if she'd ever come back. Now she held a lease. A real lease. She kept touching it, like it might disappear. The move-in date arrived 2 weeks later. Miss Linda hugged her goodbye. Walter shook her hand. Mr. Hayes smiled proudly. People who had watched her struggle. People who remembered her name. People who helped. She packed her backpack, then paused. The shelter bed sat empty behind her. She looked at it for a long moment. That bed had seen tears, fear, loneliness, hope. It had witnessed the hardest years of her life. Sarah whispered one sentence, "I'm not forgetting." Then she walked out. The apartment key felt heavy in her hand. The door opened slowly. Sunlight filled the empty room. Dust floated through the air. Silence surrounded her. Beautiful silence. She stepped inside, closed the door, and stood perfectly still. For the first time in years, nobody could tell her to leave. Nobody could move her along. Nobody could take this moment away. Still, one thing remained unresolved. One thing mattered more than the apartment, more than the promotion, more than the savings account, more than anything else. Emma. And Sarah wasn't sure if all the damage between them could truly heal. The apartment stayed quiet that first night. Sarah sat on the floor because she had almost no furniture. A folding chair, a borrowed mattress, a lamp from Goodwill. That was about it. The room looked empty. To her, it looked beautiful. She opened a fast food bag and ate dinner cross-legged on the carpet. The food wasn't special. A cheeseburger, fries, a soda. Still, it felt like a celebration. Outside, Chicago traffic hummed softly. Inside, everything felt still. She hadn't known how much she missed stillness. No shelter noise, no strangers talking, no fear of losing her spot, no wondering where she would sleep tomorrow. Just silence. Safe silence. She looked around the room, then cried. Not because she was sad, not because she was happy, because she was exhausted. Years of fear finally had somewhere to go. The tears came quietly, then they stopped. The next morning she woke before sunrise. Old habits. For a moment panic returned. She didn't know where she was. Then she saw the ceiling. Her ceiling. The realization made her smile. She got up and made coffee. The smell filled the apartment. A simple thing, but it felt rich. She carried the mug to the window. Cars moved below. People hurried to work. Life continued. For years, she watched that life from the outside. Now she was part of it again. Almost. There was still Emma. The distance between them wasn't anger anymore. It was something harder. Lost time. Lost birthdays. Lost afternoons. Lost ordinary moments. Those things leave marks, even when love remains. Sarah called every Thursday, like always. Emma answered. "Hey, Mom. Hey, kiddo." They talked about school, homework, basketball, friends, normal things. Then Sarah took a breath. "I got an apartment." Silence. A long silence. Sarah worried immediately. Then she heard Emma crying. Not loud, just enough. "Emma? You really did it?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Yeah." More silence. Then a small laugh. "I knew you would." Sarah closed her eyes. Those words again. "I knew you would." The same faith, the same belief, the same daughter. A month later, Emma visited. Sarah spent days preparing, cleaning, organizing, worrying. The apartment wasn't impressive, she knew that, but she wanted it perfect anyway. The knock came at noon. Sarah nearly ran to the door. Emma stood there holding a backpack. Older, taller, different, and somehow exactly the same. For a second, neither moved. Then they hugged. A long hug.
the kind people save for important moments, the kind that says things words can't. Emma stepped inside. She looked around carefully, the tiny living room, the kitchen, the secondhand furniture, everything. Then she smiled. "I like it." Sarah laughed. "You're being nice." "No."
Emma sat on the couch. "It feels like home." That nearly broke Sarah again. The visit lasted all weekend. They cooked together, watched movies, talked late into the night. For the first time in years, things felt normal. Not perfect, normal. And normal felt precious. Sunday evening arrived too fast. It always did. Emma packed her things. The goodbye hurt, but differently now. Not like loss, more like waiting. The future stretched ahead. For once, it didn't feel scary. Months passed. Sarah continued climbing. Her promotion led to another opportunity, then another. She learned quickly, worked hard, asked questions, stayed late when needed. The habits she built while homeless stayed with her: gratitude, discipline, persistence. The things that helped her survive now helped her succeed. 3 years after moving into the apartment, she became operations manager. The salary shocked her. The benefits shocked her. The office shocked her most. Her own office, her own desk, her name on the door. Sometimes she stared at it, just stared. Not because she was proud, because it felt impossible. One afternoon, Mike stopped by. He looked around the office. "You've come a long way." Sarah laughed. "So have you." Mike shook his head. "No." He pointed at her desk. "You did that." Sarah looked at the papers, the computer, the chair, everything. Then she remembered the bus shelter, the cold concrete, the backpack, the hunger, the fear. She remembered all of it. None of it felt far away. Not really. That part surprised her. Success didn't erase the past. It traveled with her. The difference was that it no longer controlled her. A few months later, something unexpected happened. Sarah received a letter. Handwritten, no return address. She opened it carefully. Inside was a short note, 3 sentences. Miss Linda had passed away. A family member had sent notices to people she cared about. Sarah sat quietly for a long time. Then she cried. Miss Linda had given thousands of breakfasts, thousands of smiles, thousands of small acts nobody would ever count. The world would never write articles about her, never celebrate her publicly. But Sarah knew the truth. People like Miss Linda saved lives, one small kindness at a time. Sarah attended the memorial service. The church was full. Former shelter residents filled rows of seats. Construction workers, teachers, nurses, parents, grandparents, people from every walk of life, all connected by one woman who remembered names, one woman who cared. Sarah stood afterward and spoke briefly. Her voice shook. She treated people like people. She paused. That sounds simple. Tears filled her eyes. But it isn't. The room nodded. Everyone understood. After the service, Sarah walked outside. The sun felt warm. A breeze moved through the trees. For a long moment she stood alone, thinking, remembering, grateful. Then life continued, because life always continues. Years passed. Emma graduated high school, then college. Sarah sat in the crowd watching. The same daughter who once worried everything would stay broken. The same daughter who never stopped believing. After the ceremony, Emma found her, cap tilted sideways, huge smile. "Mom?" Sarah hugged her tightly. "I love you. I love you too." Emma stepped back. "You know something?" "What?" "I brag about you." Sarah laughed. "Please don't." "I'm serious." Emma smiled. "My friends think you're amazing." Sarah shook her head. She still didn't see herself that way. She saw mistakes, failures, hard lessons, long nights, the ordinary pieces. Maybe that was enough. A few years later, Sarah experienced a moment she never expected. A moment so small most people would have missed it. She stood in her bathroom getting ready for work. Just another morning, nothing special. She looked up, saw herself in the mirror, and stopped. Not because something was wrong, because something was right. For years, she avoided mirrors. They reminded her of loss, failure, fear, someone she barely recognized. Now she looked again.
The woman staring back seemed familiar. Not younger, not richer, not prettier. Just familiar. Like an old friend finally returning home. Sarah smiled. The reflection smiled back. And for the first time in nearly a decade, she fully recognized herself. That moment mattered more than the promotions, more than the apartment, more than the money. Because success wasn't a paycheck. Success was seeing yourself again. Success was peace. Success was dignity. Success was waking up without fear owning every thought. Success was knowing you survived without losing your heart. One autumn evening, Sarah walked through a neighborhood park. Leaves covered the ground, children laughed nearby, dogs chased tennis balls. The air smelled like grass and distant barbecue smoke. Emma joined her on a bench. Neither spoke for a while. The sunset painted the sky orange. Beautiful, simple, perfect. "You ever think about those years?" Emma asked. Sarah nodded. "Sometimes." "Do they still hurt?" Sarah thought carefully. "A little?" Emma looked at her. "Why?" Sarah smiled softly. "Because they mattered." The wind moved through the trees. Cars passed beyond the park. Life continued, just like it always had. Then Emma asked one more question. "Would you change it?" Sarah stared at the sunset. A younger version of herself would have answered immediately. Of course, who wouldn't? But life had taught strange lessons. The hardest years gave her scars. They also gave her perspective, compassion, strength, understanding. Eventually, she shook her head. "No." Emma looked surprised. "Really?" Sarah smiled. "Really?" They sat quietly, watching the sun disappear, watching another ordinary day end. And Sarah felt something she once thought was gone forever. Belonging. The thing she learned through all those years was simple. People can lose jobs, homes, money, status, comfort. They can lose almost everything.
But as long as they protect the best part of themselves, they aren't finished. The world will try to convince people they're worth less when they fall. That isn't true. A person's value doesn't shrink when life gets hard. Kindness still matters. Character still matters. Hope still matters. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is keep showing up one more day. Sometimes survival itself is courage. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the bridge that carries someone back to themselves. Every person you pass is carrying a story you cannot see. Every person is fighting battles you may never know. And every person is closer to a turning point than they realize. So when life gets heavy, keep going. When the road gets dark, keep going. When nobody else believes, keep going. Because one conversation can change everything. One opportunity can change everything. One act of kindness can change everything. And sometimes the person who saves a life never even knows they did. What would happen if you believed in yourself as fiercely as someone who loves you already does? Never let hard times convince you that your story is over.